Okay, so I talked about it before, but I decided to do just a straightforward video about it, and that's the rise and fall of the Nintendo Fanbase. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, the fanbase honestly is a fucking mess at this point. And to try and explain why, in my own opinion, or just how it happened, I mean, honestly, that's really hard because you'd have to ask people who were actually there. I was never personally a straight up Nintendo fan. I started with Sony, I'll probably end with Sony. But at the same time, I really do like Nintendo, mostly their handhelds, because that's the only thing they've really been steady and improving on, so on and so forth. That's actually worked or gone in their favor. In terms of consoles, as much as they're powerful most of the time, with the exception of like the Wii, I mean, the last like 17 years really could have gone better. But the fan base, there's several different categories from what I've seen. There's the old school fan, which, they really don't buy Nintendo consoles until like either they'll buy it at launch because they're like that supportive of Nintendo still, or they'll buy like later down the road when they're because they're as much as they like Nintendo and they remember what they did back like 20 years ago. They it's not like the same because they don't cater to the consumer that much anymore. They just they have the same old game that they've been putting out forever, and they make it new and refreshing and everything. But at the same time, what does third party get? They don't get as much attention up until the Wii U. And people will say that forever, and I've said it, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to the system now that third parties getting, a couple of good games here and there. I'm not sure if it counts as third or first party since it's a crossover game, but Fire Emblem Cross Shin Megami Tensei is one of those games that made me change my mind about the system, if and when I can afford it. But so there's that fan, the old school, kind of towards the on the fence on newer systems, and they're really into the classic system, the NES, the SNES, and maybe to an extent the N64. But then you have like just the person that started like the N64 generation and just really enjoys the games of Nintendo in general, and they try to make peace with what Nintendo gives them, and they kind of care about third party, and they're like one of the few people that actually buys third party games for their console, and I respect them for that, and they're one of the few fans that I actually think tries to help like third party out, and they just generally care about gaming and everything, which I think Nintendo got a little lost in that. They wanted to push out what they had. I mean, they are first party, and that makes sense, but at the same time, you gotta leave room for the competition and your underlings, essentially third party. And for a long time, I mean, the GameCube had problems with that, even though it was one of the most powerful systems of that generation. The memory was very limited for the discs. I mean, that's not a huge factor when you think about it, because most GameCube games were only one disc, even with like 1.5 gigs or 2 gigs of space on those tiny discs. But at the same time, if you're gonna make a big game, most of the third party would go to the either the original Xbox, since it was almost as powerful, or even the PS2. Even though it wasn't a powerhouse console, it still had as much disk space as the Xbox. At least I believe so. So disk space is a huge thing for some consoles. And then, that gets into the other thing of just other fans. You have what I like to call the Wii fan base, or Wii U fan base, the newer Nintendo fans. And for the most part, they're just drones, fanboys that have never played a Nintendo console before this, or they just started after the Wii and Wii U, and they basically just gripe or say every other console sucks or every other company sucks because they're trolling or just watching and comment spamming the other fanboy fan base, mostly the Sony tards or the PlayStation fan base that again started with PS3, never played anything else until after that. So PS1 and PS2 after the fact that they're just into graphics. For the Wii and Wii U fan base, it's like, dude, we got all these games, third party and shit. The problem with both of these fan bases, the Sony side and the Nintendo side, is that their facts are all just mangled, and their own mindset is just so fucking retarded. Because the Wii fan base and the Wii U fan base, they talk about all these games, but they didn't buy them. Not many other people bought them. The people that did buy them were the people that started on N64 and actually support gaming in general. That's a fact. Only those people supported third party and supported Nintendo at the same time and supported gaming in general on Nintendo consoles. Not the little fanboys that bitch and moan over the internet and comments. I'm sorry, that's just stupid and it doesn't work. In the end, neither the company nor the fan base gets any money out of it. It's just incessant whining that leads to nowhere. And even though some of the leaders of these proposed groups buy the games, most of their fans don't. And that's just serious talk. That's bullshit. I really don't like that the Nintendo fan base is broken up and this damaged just because of a single group of people that came out of buttfuck nowhere. Like, this group started in like 2009, 2010, out of like, mostly from what I've seen because I experienced it firsthand, being, you know, sort of a commenter in the group of internet gamers or whatever. It came from one guy who was like an underling of like a guy that started this whole Nintendo, like trying to support the Wii, trying to get people to buy the games, third-party games, and supporting the console. And you could say he was kind of like one of those N64 starters, you know, people that started in the middle of the Nintendo, you know, era, the very late when Nintendo started going downhill, and supports the console fully. So one of his underlings, like, you know, took the idea of being a Nintendo fan group and just obsessed with it and trying to compete with the Sony fan group. People that don't understand video games or consoles or games in general. People that are just obsessed on what the hell is coming out and what games are for their system. And just, and that's it. Exploded. People became retards. People just spamming comments with little to no facts or details or even any understanding into what the hell they're talking about or what games are actually coming out for what system, when, why it's even coming for their system. They just want to talk shit and they don't comprehend what gaming is about or why the console is what it is or why these games are on that system and not another system. It's really stupid and ignorant, and I really don't comprehend why these battles still take place. I've taken a break, for the most part, from looking at gaming channels until today. I decided to check out the Sony side again. The Sony fanboys that don't buy games. Yeah. He's still just as stupid. I mean, it's really disappointing. As someone who started with the original PlayStation, mind you, it was like 2 years after the launch. The DualShock had already come out, and I really didn't know anything before that. And I was never like a fanboy. I mean, I always liked Sony the best for my own reasons. Mostly games, the controller design, and just, you know, my own things. I didn't like have to obsess on other consoles. I mean, I eventually did, but that was at a time when I either had no consoles or when I was buying like every console there was, which I did that at one point and blew all my money. And I ended up getting rid of all the systems and blowing my money. I've sort of grown since then, kind of, not really. But at the same time, I respect these consoles and what they've done. It's just disappointing that the fan base has split into so many different factions. And you can say the same thing about the Sony fan base as well. And I may get to that because as a genuine Sony fan, I'm not like the hugest, I'm not the biggest, I'm just like a steady fan. I could talk about my disappointment in that fan base and describe each different faction, and I probably will do that at some point. But I'll have to write down some notes and think about it. Nintendo is just the biggest target, and as much as they say, as the fanboys themselves say, third party and the developers have no sympathy for us, which I don't really understand. Nintendo technically caused this to happen. They let third party escape them due to memory constraints, and the Wii U is fixing that, and I congratulate them for that. That's good. At the same time, though, they missed every opportunity. With the GameCube, they avoided DVDs and disc platforms for so long, and they decided to go for a small optical media format, and that bit them. And although the Wii improved that, the internal memory was pretty bad, and that could have also been remedied easily within the, like, what, 7 years that the system's been out, or 6 years. And I'm not saying that it's all bad. I think Nintendo's a good company, and I like their handhelds, and I do like their consoles. I might get a Wii U eventually when I can afford it. Yeah, that shit. But you know, next I'll probably talk about the Sony fan base probably in the next few days. I'm not sure about the Microsoft fan base because I don't have much experience with it. My friends were into the 360 when that came out, and everyone jumped ship from the PS2 to the 360, at least in California, and probably numerous other states. Probably because of the big shooter boom. Holy shit, shooters, especially Call of Duty, which I never understood. I honestly find the games to be very boring. And from what my friend told me, it's all about kill streaks and addictiveness and prestige, whatever the fuck that is. I don't understand that, and I honestly, yeah, I'm interested in guns, holy shit, and, you know, war, holy crap, it's America, of course, even though on television we always talk about we're anti-war, but, or we're pro-war, it's always switching sides. I just don't find the interest in the games. They're always graphically outdated, which people will deny this. Just like people will deny that Skyrim looks old as shit too, and Oblivion looked old as shit too. All these games look old when they came out. And I'm not a huge graphics whore, but that's just a pain in the ass when I'm trying to play a game and, you know, people are talking about it like it's the best thing ever, and I have to look at it and play it, and I can't enjoy it because not only is it monotonous, it's hard to look at without me vomiting. It's just like, ugh. It's like, why? I play PS1 games that look uglier than you, but at least they're fun. It's like, God. It's like, please, just kill me now. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, PlayStation fanbase will be next, Sony fanbase. And again, Microsoft, I could probably ask my coworkers. I might ask them, because they all play Xbox. few of them play PlayStation, but that's, again, Call of Duty. They all want prestige and kill streaks and whatever the hell else. Anyway, if you have any other ideas for discussions over the interwebs, please tell me. Yeah.